what's up? Sinisa, Super Bad Estrada here, and I just want to give a huge special shout out to the relay. Thank you so much for all of the continuous support, and thank you for all of the support during and after and before every single fight.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. We all know that the reigning undisputed lightweight women's champion Katie Taylor was in action this past weekend, winning a convincing victory over then unbeaten Karen Kurabahal, just staying on her toes, sticking and moving, staying on the outside, and being responsible. That's all she needed to be to win that fight. Post-fight, Eddie Hearn declared that Katie Taylor's next fight will take place in Ireland. Whoever it is, Ireland has to be next for Katie Taylor. It's time to give Ireland a sporting event they will never forget. Katie Taylor has stated she wants her next fight to be the Amanda Serrano rematch at Croker Park, 82,000 capacity stadium in Ireland. And for those not aware, Katie hasn't fought in Ireland as a professional.
She's fought in New York, she's fought in London.
And transatlantically, Katie Taylor has been fighting at many different locations, many cities, but she's never fought in her native Ireland.
Not as a professional. Post-fight, Amanda Serrano congratulated Katie, saying, "We dance again."
It appears that Amanda is willing to put her undisputed featherweight run on hold to, yet again, take on Katie Taylor in what would be a bigger fight than any fight she can have in the featherweight division, even an undisputed title fight with Erica Cruz, who she hasn't had much luck of cornering. Thus, Amanda is ready to move on.
I can't say as I blame her.
Potential stumbling blocks, potential obstacles they may need to overcome in a second set of negotiations for a second fight. Well, you know, the Amanda Serrano people, they know the value of this thing. They know that it's a big fight, a very big fight, and I don't know, perhaps they might want.
You can't rule out the possibility that Amanda's handlers might want more money for a rematch than what they got in the first fight, even though they lost the first fight, knowing the value of the match, that it's one of the biggest fights that can be made.
It's a distinct possibility that the Serrano people try and negotiate for more money. I guess the saving grace is that at Croker Park, in front of 82,000 people, the money might actually be there to satisfy the financial demands of the Serrano people. It's entirely possible that...
I haven't heard anything about the Serrano people wanting more money, you understand. I'm just saying that because of the value of this fight and how big the first one was, it is possible that the Serrano people might want more money.
Otherwise, Amanda will continue on her undisputed run, her undisputed campaign at featherweight, if said financial demands, assuming there are financial demands, if said demands are not met.
But I reiterate, that's just me bouncing ideas around. I haven't seen anything about Amanda wanting more money for a second fight than what she got in the first. I haven't seen that.
As far as how the second fight goes, well, we've seen Katie Taylor in at least one high-level rematch situation, the Delphine Persoon rematch, their second fight, and Katie did win more decisively in the second fight than she did in the first.
There were people, they thought that Delphine Persoon did enough to get the nod, that Delphine Persoon did enough to win the first fight, hence the second.
In a second fight, I imagine that Katie Taylor would spend less time in the pocket, more time on her toes, more time on the balls of her feet, pecking at Amanda Serrano, who'd likely be the aggressor, likely be the one coming forward.
I imagine the adjustment that Katie would make in the second fight to make it easier on herself than she did in the first, to spend less time in the pocket, 1 and 2 punches at a time from the outside.
It was Katie's willingness to exchange, willingness to trade punches that allowed Amanda to get off those big shots.
Katie's got to clean that up in a second fight.
Elsewhere in the women's lightweight division, it has been revealed by networks that Yamila Abellaneda next confrontation would be on November 3rd against the undefeated IBO champion, Estelle Mossely. This is supposed to be going down early next month. You might be familiar with that name, Yamila Abellaneda. That's who Terry Harper faced in her big comeback fight, rebound fight, off her knockout loss to Alicia Baumgartner.
I'm just going to come right out and say it. Estelle Mossely Ioka's career, her pro career, has been a big disappointment.
She's quite content just staying on the outskirts, staying on the outside, fighting lesser fighters than an Olympic gold medalist should be fighting. For a perspective, Ebony Bridges doesn't come from some deep amateur background. Ebony Bridges is a late starter in the sport, and Ebony Bridges is already a full-fledged world champion.
I mean, look at one of my personal favorites, Ellie Scotney. She's already fought two former champions in Jorgelina Guanini and Maria Cecilia Roman. She very recently, this past weekend, won the EBU title.
Ellie comes from a solid amateur background, but she's not an Olympic gold medalist like Estelle Mossely Ioka. I mean, one would expect that somebody that comes from that kind of background, that kind of pedigree, they would have stepped it up by now. And Estelle Mossely Ioka, she's just out there on the fringe.
I mean, even if she's not pursuing a Katie Taylor fight, because, I don't know, maybe she doesn't want to be the B-side to Katie, and she'd have to be to get that fight. And even if that's not the direction that she wants to go in, what about moving up to 140 pounds?
It almost feels like she's just boxing to keep up appearances. She's boxing, still boxing, for appearances' sake, because she's not really trying to mix it up with the other girls. And there's no shortage of them at or around those weights, 130, 135, 140.
The story is that Estelle is supposed to be returning in early November against Argentina's own Yamila Abellaneda, which is funny because
A trip over to BoxRec reveals that Yamila Abellaneda is indeed supposed to be returning to action in November, but a little later on the 11th against Pamela Benavides. So what's she going to do? She's going to fight Estelle Mossely Ioka on the 3rd and return to action on the 11th? That's a pretty quick turnaround.
the Estelle Mossely Ioka fight, for all these reports circulate, and it's not actually registered on BoxRec, so one is left to wonder if that is going to come into fruition. It might.
And if it does, it's just another example of Estelle Mossely Ioka going for the low-hanging fruit instead of going for the gusto anywhere at or around these weights, because there really are better fights to be made for an Olympic gold medalist than an Abellaneda fight.
Yeah, they'll bill it as a title defense of Estelle's IBO title, but we all know that the IBO isn't recognized by the Major Four.
The Major Four sanctioning bodies just don't get a sense of direction when I look at Estelle's career and how it's been and how it still is. I mean, what's the end game here?
I don't even know anymore.
Cheers,
I
mate.
think you're a tosser, you little toss top. I won't be doing any more interviews with you little toss top bearded.
No worries,
bald
mate.
headed
Thanks
toss
very
tops.
much.
Kiss my balls, you little one. You little shit house.
Have you worked out how to close this phone? Are you alright?
Suck
Hit the
a
button at the
dick.
bottom.
My previous video, we talked about all the logical fallacies Tyson Fury's answers, his answers to the True Geordie's questions in reference to the collapse of the Joshua fight and the trilogy with Derek Chisora, the widely criticized trilogy that, you know what?
What?
A lot of people aren't too crazy about.
But you know, another angle of this story, another angle of this that caught my attention, not exclusive to the Tyson Fury stuff.
I won't be doing any more interviews with you little toss top.
You heard Tyson Fury distinctly say that he wouldn't be doing any more interviews with the True Geordie based on the line of questioning. But the line of questioning, it wasn't ambush journalism, you understand. It's not the kind of stuff to where you're blindsiding Tyson Fury with questions from left field, far left field, you know, like Kinahan stuff, mob tie stuff.
These questions were directly related to his trilogy with Derek Chisora and the collapse of the Joshua fight and what particulars may have led to the collapse. I mean, these are genuine questions that need answers.
President of the Tyson Fury fan club, Gareth A. Davies, recently chimed in on the interview and Tyson Fury's reaction to this line of questioning.
Everyone was talking about last night with Tyson Fury and True Geordie. Get your initial thoughts on that, please, Gareth.
It was an unusual interview in the way that True Geordie went about it, I think. The order in which he'd done the interview and how he's pressing him so hard on the Chisora fight, but quite negative about it, that you can be negative about it. A lot of people are. I think Frank Warren told me on Saturday night, came on TalkSport, I think they've sold 58,000 tickets already. They'll sell out. It's the Tyson Fury show. There is validity to questioning the veracity of a trilogy fight between them, because Tyson's won so convincingly, particularly the second time. I was there that night when he switched southpaw and hit him with loads of left uppercuts and made Derek quit on his stool. But I think there was an element of wind-up in that. I don't know if they're friends. I don't know if it was parody going on, but I don't know if there was an element of wind-up from True Geordie. And when he got rid of Tyson, he said he was glad he'd recorded that. But I think Tyson lost his rag with him a little bit towards the end. Got a bit frustrated with him He's got a lot going on. He's got that Netflix series going on. He's building towards Chisora. He's in camp day in, day out. You can see in the leanness of his face at the moment that he's working hard.
That's what punditry in the sport of boxing has become, to where Gareth A. Davies feels that True Geordie was winding up Tyson Fury by asking him real questions that consumers want answers to, the boxing community at large, the people you expect to purchase your pay-per-view or buy a ticket to be there.
You have to be winding Tyson Fury up to ask him about the circumstances, dig a little deeper.
The way the sport is covered these days is a bit different than it has been covered in previous eras. I mean, in previous eras, you had actual journalists and actual pundits asking the questions. They weren't necessarily relying on access to any one fighter, any one set of fighters, or any one stable, any one promoter to get a paycheck. They were essentially being paid by the news network to retrieve that information. Thus, they were at liberty to ask the hard questions without fear of repercussions, fear of being denied access. And if they are denied access, well, they're still going to get paid by that paper.
The fear of fiscal repercussions or the fear of being denied access didn't stop the journos in previous eras of boxing being critical.
Journalists like the late great Sporty Lewis or the late great Bert Sugar, they let their feelings be known. They didn't have hair on their tongue.
Yeah, and they weren't licking anybody's ass for access.
The way many content creators do these days. If you're a content creator that's relying on access to Tyson Fury for content, well, you don't want to ask him the hard questions, because if you do, he might get uncomfortable, you'll ruffle his feathers. You don't get that content anymore. I mean, that's the way it is now.
The reason True Geordie has the liberty to do this is because he's not relying on access to Tyson Fury to drum up metrics for his channel. He's already a very successful podcaster, content creator here on YouTube, and it's not all about covering Tyson Fury or even covering boxing.
Now, the True Geordie guy, he covers a lot of different things on his channel, a lot of different things on his podcast. Tyson Fury could never speak to this guy again, never appear on his podcast, and True Geordie probably wouldn't bat an eyelash. He's got so many other videos that drum up so many other metrics.
He doesn't have to lick Fury's ass. He can ask him the hard questions. But really, what's so hard about what he asked him?
Gareth Davies alleges that True Geordie, he might have been winding Tyson Fury up, or perhaps he was applying too much pressure when it came to the Chisora stuff. That seemed like a pretty ho-hum, run-of-the-mill line of questions to me.
I mean, remember, it was Tyson Fury that made all of this public. The Joshua stuff, the Chisora stuff. So when you do stuff in front of the public and things work out a certain way, the public's gonna have questions.
If you would have done all of this discreetly, behind closed doors, without uploading 3 and 4 videos daily to your social media, nobody would have nothing to ask you. But you made a decision to take all of this to the public, and now inquiring minds want to know, how is it?
You set a deadline for AJ, but you don't for Chisora, even though both AJ and Chisora got the same management company. You're dealing with the same people.
So much fucking sense does it make to set a deadline?
Covered all that. The basic idea here is that Tyson Fury only wants softball questions.
If he can't control the narrative, he loses it.
Why do you think the guy was uploading 3 and 4 videos a day to his social media? An attempt to control the narrative, to make things seem a certain way.
Is that how super fights have been traditionally negotiated, in full view of the public eye whilst pestering and badgering the opposing team?
Gareth Davies and a few others might be quick to apologize for Tyson Fury's outburst, but it was unwarranted. Those were pretty ho-hum questions True Geordie asked.
The story here isn't Tyson Fury's responses or even True Geordie's questions. The true story here is Tyson Fury's reaction, his overreaction.
Well, so you can't control the narrative and now you want to throw your toys out of the pram.
At men's super flyweight news, per tweet from International Boxing News, Kazuto Ioka versus Joshua Franco has been confirmed. The WBO have approved the super flyweight unification between WBA champion Joshua Franco and WBO champion Kazuto Ioka. What a fight!
We talked about this fight in my previous video and how Kazuto Ioka, 4-division champion Kazuto Ioka, veteran of the sport, already a very accomplished guy.
Sporting a professional record of 29 wins with 2 losses, no draws, and 15 knockouts. It appears that Kazuto is finally dipping his toe in the pool.
He's finally set to unify. He's finally set to take on one of the other super flyweight champions at super flyweight, newly crowned WBA champion Joshua Franco.
Joshua Franco, who was supposed to be fighting Juan Francisco Estrada for the WBA title by way of the mandatory process, and Juan made the decision that he'd rather vacate that title than defend it against Joshua.
Joshua, who sports a professional record of 18 wins with 1 loss, 2 draws.
8 knockouts, having only ever been knocked out once, just once.
Approximately 4 years ago in 2018 at the hands of Lucas Fernandez.
Joshua Franco, very experienced guy. The trilogy with Oscar Negrete. The
Trilogy with Andrew Maloney. He's coming off a win, a decision win over Andrew Maloney. Here's the problem, though. Here's the issue. It's been well over a year since Joshua Franco saw any action.
You heard that right. Joshua Franco hasn't had a fight since August of 2021. He hasn't had a fight since August of last year. Going into this year, he hasn't seen any action, and his upcoming fight with Kazuto Ioka, that unification match, that's at the very end of the year, the very tail end of it. So Joshua Franco may have considerable ring rust to shake off.
Yeah, he will, but not Kazuto.
Whereas Kazuto, the more experienced guy and the more decorated fighter, he's already seen action this year. He saw action 2 times last year and once already this year in July, settling the score with his old buddy, Donnie Nietes, and avenging the loss to him, the loss from many years ago. He's coming right off a points decision win, a dominant win over Donnie, the aging fighter.
Kazuto avenged the loss, and now he's looking to unify titles with Joshua Franco. It's really less than ideal for Joshua Franco going into a fight like this, big fight like this, having not seen action for such a long time. This ain't the kind of guy you want to shake off ring rust with.
In a more specific sense, and even a general one, you don't want to have to shake off ring rust in a unification match, least of all when you're the away fighter. This fight is set to go down in Kazuto Ioka's neck of the woods. It's a tradition in the land of the rising sun to stage a big fight at the end of the year. Like the Kosei Tanaka fight Kazuto.
Like the Kosei Tanaka fight Kazuto had at the tail end of 2020.
He won big time in 2020. He might win big time in 2022.
Which might set him up for something even bigger in 2023.
Per a tweet from Michael Benson, Juan Estrada versus Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez 3 on December 3rd will now be for the vacant WBC Super Flyweight World title after Jesse Bam Rodriguez vacated the belt to move down in weight. Estrada was already WBC franchise champion.
I told you guys here on the channel, I told you as soon as that news broke that Bam was moving down and he vacated the green belt, that in all likelihood it would pop up in the Chocolatito versus Estrada trilogy. It's only right.
Juan is still WBC franchise champion after all. Moreover, that sets up an even bigger super flyweight contest, an even bigger potential super flyweight fight between the winner of that fight and the winner of this fight, the winner of Ioka versus
Franco.
I thought that Roman Gonzalez was a man hard done in that second Juan Francisco Estrada fight. I thought he got robbed, and he hasn't missed a beat since then. You know, he still looks sharp, still looks capable, whereas Gallo Estrada, not so much.
He didn't look too hot in his last fight, though I do understand he was shaking off ring rust.
He was, but I still feel like Roman Gonzalez beat him before. I still think Roman Gonzalez can beat him now. And if Roman beats Juan and Kazuto beats Joshua...
Ladies and gentlemen, what we have ourselves is a battle of the 4 division champions.
They both are. And them fighting is a distinct possibility.